American politics never fails to deliver moments that feel less like governance and more like a plot ripped straight out of a political drama. The latest? Congresswoman Maxine Waters has gone full throttle, calling for the 25th Amendment to be invoked against President Donald Trump. And what triggered this? Not a war, not a scandal at Camp David, but Trump's decision to remove Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook from her position. Yes, you heard that right. Firing a central banker has now escalated to talk of declaring the president unfit to serve. On Friday, during an appearance on MSNBC, Waters did not hold back. She said, "It is time to call for Article 25 of the Constitution of the United States of America to determine his unfitness, to determine that something's wrong with this president. And I would suggest that we move very aggressively to talk about the danger to this country and to our democracy and not play around with this, because this is absolutely one of the most destructive things that this president could do." Now let's pause here. Invoking the 25th Amendment is no small thing. It's the constitutional nuclear option, the mechanism designed to remove a sitting president who is physically or mentally unable to perform the duties of the office. It's been whispered about before in modern times, but never actually used in full. For Waters to say this on national television, in response to Trump meddling with the Federal Reserve, is a massive escalation in the rhetoric war. So, what exactly happened? Earlier this week, Trump removed Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, alleging she misrepresented mortgage information. According to him, she had crossed a line. According to her lawyers, the allegations are flimsy, politically motivated, and outright unlawful. Cook responded by suing Trump, asking for a restraining order to stay in her position. That case is now speeding its way toward the Supreme Court, setting up what could become one of the most consequential legal battles between the White House and the Federal Reserve in decades. The implications are enormous. The Federal Reserve is supposed to be independent. Presidents can appoint governors, but they don't get to micromanage or fire them at will. The whole idea is to keep monetary policy, decisions about interest rates, inflation control, and the stability of the economy, free from the daily political storms of Washington. Trump's critics say that by ousting Lisa Cook, he is undermining that independence. Waters went even further, arguing that Trump's actions threaten not just the economy, but the stability of democracy itself. She warned, this stands to basically upend the entire economy. This stands to really deal with what is going to happen on Wall Street, what's going to happen with interest rates, what's going to happen with the President of the United States being able to make decisions that he will personally benefit from. And that's the heart of the accusation. That Trump isn't just making a personnel move, he's setting the stage to manipulate the Federal Reserve for personal or political gain. But the drama didn't stop there. On the same MSNBC panel, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz chimed in, suggesting Trump's real target isn't Lisa Cook at all, but Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. She said, Donald Trump's real preference is to fire Jerome Powell. But he knows that's a bridge too far. So instead, he's taking a monkey wrench and trying to meddle with the component parts of the Federal Reserve by firing Lisa Cook on something she's not even being investigated for. According to Wasserman Schultz, the supposed mortgage misrepresentation Trump cited as justification doesn't even hold up. She explained that Cook didn't get preferential interest rates on any of her loans, meaning there was no fraud, no benefit, no crime. In her words, it's preposterous. Let's stop for a moment and appreciate the irony here. The United States government is now in a showdown where a sitting president's decision to fire a Federal Reserve governor is being described as grounds for the 25th Amendment. That's not just rare, that's unprecedented. In American history, the Federal Reserve has always been a battleground for ideology, but rarely for personal power grabs of this magnitude. Think about the stakes. If Trump can remove Cook, what's to stop him from targeting other members of the Fed who disagree with his economic vision? And if the courts allow this, the independence of the Federal Reserve could be severely weakened, leaving financial policy vulnerable to presidential whims. Wall Street knows this, global markets know this, and the political world knows this. Which is why this isn't just about one woman's job, it's about the balance of power between the presidency and the central bank. Maxine Waters' comments about the 25th Amendment may sound extreme, but they tap into a broader anxiety, that Trump is eroding guardrails that were designed to keep American democracy and its economy stable. If a president can punish Fed officials for not towing the line, then monetary policy ceases to be independent. It becomes just another weapon in the arsenal of partisan politics. Of course, Trump and his supporters see things differently. They argue that he's simply holding officials accountable, rooting out misconduct, and protecting the integrity of institutions. To them, the cries of unfitness are nothing more than political theater, another attempt to delegitimize him after years of investigations, impeachments, and controversies. But let's not forget, the lawsuit is real. Lisa Cook has taken this battle to court, and her lawyers are confident. They insist Trump has not met the legal threshold to remove her. If the courts side with Cook, Trump's move will be struck down, and his attempt to reshape the Fed from the inside will fail. If the courts side with Trump, however, it could open the door to even more aggressive interventions in the future. And that's the part that has lawmakers like Waters and Wasserman-Schultz on high alert. There's also the political angle. By firing Lisa Cook, Trump has put himself at the center of an economic storm just as Americans are already anxious about inflation, interest rates, and the possibility of another recession. Any hint that he's destabilizing the Federal Reserve for personal or political advantage could backfire spectacularly. On the other hand, if he frames it as draining the swamp and removing untrustworthy officials, it could energize his base. And in the middle of all this, the 25th Amendment is now part of the conversation. Waters wasn't subtle. She called on Congress to move aggressively, not to wait for courts, not to hesitate. To her, Trump's removal of Cook is evidence enough that something is dangerously wrong. But will that call gain traction? Probably not immediately. The 25th Amendment requires the Vice President and a majority of the cabinet to declare the president unfit. In Trump's case, that scenario seems unlikely. But the fact that we're even discussing it shows just how explosive the political climate has become. So here we are. A fired Federal Reserve governor. A lawsuit rushing to the Supreme Court. Lawmakers shouting about unfitness and constitutional remedies. And an economy hanging in the balance. It's a reminder that in American politics, nothing is ever just about policy. It's about power, perception, and precedent. And when the independence of the Federal Reserve collides with the ambitions of the White House, the result is bound to shake not just Washington, but the entire global financial system. The real question is, where does this go from here? Will the courts rein in Trump's attempt to fire Lisa Cook, or will they hand him a green light to reshape the Fed at will? And if it's the latter, how much independence does the Federal Reserve really have left? So now I turn the question over to you. Do you think Maxine Waters was right to call for the 25th Amendment in response to this? Is Trump's removal of Lisa Cook a reckless abuse of power, or just a legitimate exercise of presidential authority? And more importantly, what does this mean for the future of America's economy if politics and the Federal Reserve become inseparable?